Oh, hey, what's going on, guys? We didn't see you there. We're the Leg Kick Podcast, coming at you live or dead. It's Halloween. October the 31st, coming off of UFC 267. An absolute banger. A fun one. One of the good ones. One of the John good ones. Before we get into that, we should introduce ourselves, let you know what we're about. I am one of your hosts, Stefano, Hosko, MMA fighter, New York resident, all-around bad guy. And to my right, it is the newest member of the OVO team, correspondent for the Fan 590, and Jazz FM, MMA fighter extraordinaire, and member of the John Jones Legal Defense Team, Michael Asiffo. Tell the people something about yourself.
We're currently working on John Jones' defense. Oh, hold on. Can you hear that feedback? My bad. Let me maybe. No feedback. Okay, yeah. No, we're currently working on John Jones's legal defense. We're saying that he tripped and fell. Always works like a charm.
I heard you guys were also going for she was asking for it defense as well.
Yes, as well. Also true.
Effective.
I hear that works wonders. We're working on it. Me and what's her name? The one that got John Gomeshi off.
I don't know her name, but
you know what I'm talking about. That ninja of a lawyer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To be fair, well, we won't get into the John Gomeshi.
Oh man, if you want us to get demonetized even more,
we don't need that. We don't need any more of an uphill battle than we already have. But before we get into the card, like the podcast, subscribe to the podcast. You can find it where you find podcasts. Leave a comment down below. Tell your friends about it, and above all, enjoy, I suppose. And let's dive straight into it, shall we? So we're going to skip the news today. We're going to get into that next week. We're going to hop straight into the card. So at 45 years young, Glover Teixeira becomes the third current Brazilian champion and light heavyweight champion of the UFC via arm triangle choke. Sorry, rear naked choke. I'm getting them mixed up with another result. Rear naked choke in the second round. Yes, second round. Mike, you wanna lead on this one?
Yeah, a couple things. First of all, he's 42. But it would have been better.
45 is Minotauro Nogueira. Jeez, my brain is scrambled from excessive alcohol.
No worries. But the other thing is that, it's always nice when you see these kind of stories, like guy on his last legs gets a run and all of a sudden pulls off the victory. I had a couple stats with Glover Teixeira that I want to kind of shoot out there for a couple of people because it's a very inspirational story, Glover Teixeira and what he's kind of gone through. For people who don't know, this is his second title opportunity that he actually made good of. His last opportunity was in 2014 against a gentleman by the name of John Jones.
7 years ago.
7 years ago. So he, April 26, 2014. So so 7 years ago, he lost the title opportunity at already, 35 years old. So you would have thought it was over, and then he comes back again. Another really, 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 really interesting stat here too is his career started in 2002. So it's been 19 years of this battle. He started on June 7th, 2002 against a gentleman by the name of Eric Schwartz, who doesn't even have a Wikipedia page, and he lost by TKO in the second round, and then went on to do his thing. Also, by the way, lost to Ed Herman, who's still currently in the UFC as well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'd like to. Oh, sorry. Go on, Mike.
No. I just wanted to throw that out there. He did. Yeah. His first fight in the UFC, by the way, was 2012, 10 years ago. So all of these things is to say this gentleman, this is a guy who's had to climb, who's had to scratch and claw, and he finally won.
Yeah, before we get into the more technical aspects of the bout, I just want to frame the narrative for me as I saw it going into this one. Now, Glover, I remember Glover I don't know if you guys remember, I've spoken of it very highly, but there's an old show called Tap Out where the Tap Out crew would go and find talent, right?
Yeah.
And sponsor them essentially, right? They'd be a Tap Out sponsored fighter, and they're very nice, and they do a lot of nice things for these fighters. Glover was on that show. So I became aware of Glover years ago, way before he was in the UFC. And he was training with a guy named Scott Lighty at the time. They showed his fight, which was in a cage. The Tap Out crew, was present there, and there was all this hype over Glover. He's this marauder with a wicked cross counter and a phenomenal ground game. And visa issues kept him out of the UFC for the longest time. But he was kind of known as one of Chuck Liddell. There's a name for you. Mm-hmm. Chuck Liddell's main sparring partners back in the day, right? Of all people, Chuck Liddell. So that shows you how far we're going back. And then when he did get into the UFC and lost his shot to Jones, he did quite well. He knocked out Rashad Evans. He had some very key performances, but the whole narrative was one of like, man, this is really too bad. He got into the UFC just a little too late. And this is back in like 2014, 2012. That's what people said when he got into the UFC. Damn, we missed his best years. It's really too bad. We missed Glover's best years. Maybe if he got in a little earlier in the Rampage, Chuck Liddell, Rashad Evans era, we'd have a champion here. But unfortunately, time has passed him by. The division's passed him by. Now, this man hung around through knockout losses, through defeats, through rejections, through just time after time of having to win and climb up and beat successive generations with essentially the same skill set as he had in the beginning, just a little refined and a little more polished. And now here he is at 42 years of age, the UFC light heavyweight champion. As inspirational as Jan Blachowicz' story is, for me, this brings a tear to your eye. This brings a tear to your eye.
Like, I remember, like, actually kind of sort of getting emotional. I wouldn't say I cried, but I definitely did some clutch backs, you did a couple of those for sure.
You're crying. Yeah.
You're like, I'm not crying, it's very dusty in here. There's but yeah, it's one of those very inspirational stories. And I was trying to even make that kind of point known, is that the man was already 35 when he lost his original title shot to John Jones. I believe 35. It could have been 34, 35. But you would consider that a little over the hill, if not significantly over the hill at the time. And
go on. People in our sport bring up Randy Couture as like, it's never too late. But let's be honest, that's an exception. That's not the rule, as we've seen. And that was a whole different era. That was like the, circus era of MMA still. Not entirely, but somewhat. And like, that looked like it was going to be an aberration. Yeah. As it is, but go on.
No, for sure. And like, it should be a note to, while Randy definitely beat there are some huge names on his list. Tito, Chuck, Sylvia when Sylvia was still Sylvia. It's not the competition Glover was beating in his later career and even in his earlier career, right? And I gotta say, like, again, we're gonna get into the technical aspects and the double leg stuff and Glover's ability to scramble when he's in trouble. But I just think from just a perspective of this, it's a gentleman who, for the most part, has been a boxer grappler for the most part. He's got a couple skills on the feet. He's definitely really a marauder on the ground. And he's just found a way to maximize that talent. So for people who I always have this like discussion with people is like, has MMA really evolved? Do you need to be more well-rounded? And it's like, well, it depends, right? And I think this is one of those examples of, you don't necessarily, it's not necessarily having all the skills in the book, as opposed to how do you tactically use those skills?
Exactly. Have a well-established path to victory and make other people fight in that lane. And that's what Glover does, right? It was simple but effective what he did in this fight. The classic Glover combination is that cross counter over the top followed by a left hook. And if you stand in the pocket with him, often it'll be lights out. Now, he did good work with that early, countering the jab of Jan. Jan seemed to be a little fleet of foot, which is hard to do as a big guy, but Glover dinged him early with that. And one of the big warning signs for me that Jan was going to lose was in the first round with ease, Glover was able to herd Jan straight back into the cage. And that's where he does his best work. If he doesn't knock you out with that cross counter left hook, he's going to get your back to the cage and he's going to shoot that double leg. And he has a very good double leg defense. Hit that cool little trip in the second round where he was in on a single. And then I think the first takedown was a double leg, and he spent the majority of the round on top. Not really landing extensive ground and pound, but in the full guard of Jan, kind of pitter-patter shots. He was using that can opener to great effect. Like usually people use the can opener as something to make you address to open the guard, or they'll pull back the head and kind of roll over an elbow on the top. But it seemed like he was really trying to like break the neck of Jan using that.
And it seemed effective too in hurting Jan, because you could tell Jan was definitely even things like when Glover went for that left hook, Jan's neck did like a weird kind of turn thing, I noticed.
Yeah. It's not fun. And even if you don't cause structural damage to the neck, it wears on you. Like having your head pulled down like that, it exhausts you. It strains your nervous system. It's not fun. One of the adjustments that Jan made that was kind of interesting that I liked was he'd kind of, in the second round, he'd like flick out that jab. I don't know if you picked up on this, but he'd flick out that jab. He'd wait for the cross counter of Glover, which he tends to kind of lean forward a bit and dip his head. And then Jan would kind of flick out that jab, wait for the cross counter, and time an uppercut in between that exchange.
I was going to say that.
Yeah, that was nice. I like that little adjustment there. And he was able to ding Glover on a couple of times, set him back on his heels and actually wobbled him. But if you stick around in exchanges with Glover long enough, you see what happens. That left hook is tight and it's going to land. The takedown was, one of those cheesy ones. He was in on a single leg, circled to the far leg, and then just kind of scooped out the foot. And from there, it was just utter dominance. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and you definitely see, a lot of people make the talk about Paul Craig and his grappling, and it's a lot more dynamic and flashy. But I think at some point we got to talk about our boy Glover as being probably the best grappler in the division, and he doesn't get a lot of credit for it because his just positional control and dominance. This is probably the fourth guy he's done it to in as many fights. We talked about the Anthony Smith fight where it was one of the more lopsided fights in the division's history. Then Thiago Santos, and then this is another good example too as well.
Kuntalaba.
Oh, Ian Kutalaba, right? After weathering an early storm as well against Kutalaba. Well, but that's a story of a Kutalaba fight for the most part.
Glover's durable. He can hang around in these fights, even when he does get hurt. And eventually he can secure a takedown. And it seems like his top control is such that he's not only a submission threat, but a ground and pound threat from the top as well, right? He can do it from the top. Looking for arm triangles, switching between, arm triangles and key locks. His ground and pound is vicious. He passes to mount. He makes a full use of all the positions available to him, as opposed to just, he can do the whole modern MMA sit and guard and pound from there and pass to half guard and back and forth. But he's willing to pursue more positional advantages when the opportunity presents it as well. And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, no, I agree. And just right away, like very rarely do you see in new school MMA guys just immediately pass the mount when it's available to them, because they want to sit in that half guard to hold people down, to hold them down. And there is something to be said for, climbing the jiu-jitsu ladder, as a person used to call it, that I know. The idea of like you're starting guard, then you climb to half guard, then you get to full mount, then you get to rear mount, and then you sink in the rear naked choke. Old school stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And as much as MMA has evolved and you're seeing a lot of guys who are more well-rounded, some lost art, I like to call them lost arts. Some lost arts have kind of passed us by a little bit. And we've kind of missed, and Glover, and to an extent even Charles Oliveira, who's another Brazilian UFC champion, are picking these skills that, these old skills that we haven't seen in a while back up.
Right? In two very different ways as far as because you don't see Glover playing like a dynamic guard, but as far as that kind of advancing through the positional ladder, where Charles Oliveira kind of bringing back the game of like being very offensive from your back and Yeah. Now, all that being said, though, as much as I was impressed by this performance, and Glover definitely deserves his day in the sun, as he will, I think by the end of 2022, mark my words, we're going to see Ankalaev and Yuri Prochazka contending for a belt.
Yeah.
I very much believe that. What Ankalaev did today, not to switch topics too quickly, we can stick on Glover if you want, but I think his skill set matches up very poorly with Glover. But sorry, Mike, any more thoughts on this matchup?
No, that's pretty much it. I do want to say I felt bad for Jan. I didn't think Jan showed up himself in this one. But then again, when have we seen someone try to take Jan to the ground much, right? Like maybe this is one of those like weird things that no one really knew.
In the first fight, right? Corey Anderson.
Oh yeah, Corey Anderson definitely did. But
that feels like a Sunday.
But yeah, no, like I think Jan's run was very impressive. He beat Adesanya for God's sakes. So let's not forget what Jan Blachowicz did, although I do think he was a little off in this one. But yeah, let's move on to Ankalaev because Ankalaev was impressive against Volkan Oezdemir. I think the clock is ticking off Volkan a little bit. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say really quick, people forget that before John Jones, light heavyweight was one of those hot potato titles. Like you had Chuck Liddell with a couple of defenses, and then Rampage Jackson making maybe one or two defenses. He lost it to Forrest, and then Forrest losing it to Rashad losing it to Lyoto losing it to Shogun, and then we have John Jones. So it used to be a hot potato title. People forget that. But sorry, go on, Mike. We have Ankalaev and Volkan Oezdemir with a fight that I think has not immediate title implications, but certainly title implications.
Yeah, for sure. And Ankalaev, I think, a lot of, I know a YouTuber by the name of The Weasel was very high on Ankalaev. He thinks he thought he could beat Jan outright, Jan Blachowicz. So he's definitely a guy who's a special talent. I on the broadcast, which was, surprisingly okay, like tolerable that night. They made this point of he's almost too special in the sense that he's such a controlled fighter that you think like he could get guys out of there quicker.
He's an obsession with being one of those fighters that has an obsession with being perfect and with staying in his lane. Like what he did was very scientific against Volkan, although Volkan was able to catch him early. But it seemed like once Magomed Ankalaev kind of figured out what Volkan was trying to do, there wasn't a breadth of tricks there. Like Volkan did a lot of, it was southpaw versus orthodox, Ankalaev being southpaw, and Volkan did a lot of not stance switching as far as fighting for long periods out of like southpaw, but a lot of like switching before entering range. He would switch a lot and then throw the outside low kick, so they'd both be in southpaw, and then he'd throw the outside low kick. He'd sometimes like think like he was going to throw the body kick to from a orthodox to southpaw stance, and then he kind of like slant as Ankalaev checked, and then start banging from there, throw a couple of hooks. But it looked like that was pretty much all he had to offer throughout the fight. And he was at a big speed disadvantage. Plus, if you're going to do that, you really have to establish the threat of that body kick in order to make those feints work, right? And it seemed like Volkan didn't really do that, whereas Ankalaev in the later rounds was content to just pot shot, and then he hits, as usual, that beautiful drop back lead right hook counter, sometimes following it up with jab cross hook, right? Sometimes he'll just throw the lead hook. Sometimes it'll be jab cross hook and he'll pursue forwards after his opponent's done throwing. But all of his combination work is done after his opponent throws and leaves himself out of position. Offensively, he does very little, just kind of the odd jab, the odd kick, and then just waits on his opponent. And I can see why they would say that, he's an obsession with maybe being perfect and fighting in that way, as opposed to making it a little ugly and getting his opponents out of there.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with wanting a nice, clean fight. I say this as a fighter. Those are the ways that you protect your brain, into your 40s as a striker. Like that's how you do it. You got to be defensively responsible. You have to be a defense first person. As much, and it's a very hard skill to have. A couple things I noticed technically here. Ankalaev, really giving up the outside foot to land that hook a couple times, and land the jab as well, and then would use the jab to stun Vulcan or like get Vulcan's attention to step over that foot and then hit that cross, which is how he got the first knockdown against Vulcan in, I believe, the second round or no, first round. It was the first round. He stunned Vulcan hard. Good check left hook on the inside when he got the inside foot. Used it to pivot over and land a couple hard shots. Kind of one of the weaknesses I did notice with Ankalaev is it seems like he's content on taking a leg kick to then throw something over the top. And if you're facing a Thiago Santos, for example, I don't know how much that's going to bite you on the ass moving into the later rounds. But, I think he'll make the adjustment. To be honest, he's too good and too special not to. So, yeah.
He reminds me of kind of like a light heavyweight Muslim Salikov in a lot of way with very different weapons. Salikov obviously favoring the drop back cross as opposed to that lead right hook. Also Salikov favoring a lot more spinning attacks, but his control of space.
Excuse me. I said check left hook on that cut Vulcan open. Check right hook.
Check right hook. Yeah, lead hook.
Sorry.
Who's a southpaw should know of all people, Mike. His control of distance is meticulous, and against someone like Glover, I'm going to see that would probably present a lot of problems, I think, because one, he can wrestle. Two, he's going to be very difficult to crowd to the fence. He's a difficult guy to crowd, he's just has a speed advantage over a lot of people in the division, and he's able to finish off these exchanges very well. I'd like to see, if anything, and he's shown that he's done this very well in other fights, I'd like him to add just a nice stabbing front kick to the gut. Something to encourage his opponents to come forward and win them a little bit. You know what I mean? Just something to force them. It's okay to fight exclusively on the counter like that, but I'd like to see something just non-committal that he can just throw out there that's going to force his opponent's hand into these exchanges to add more action to the fight, just adding more bullets to the chamber, if you will.
Yeah, no, I agree. He tried it a couple times, like a front kick, the rear front kick, which I think as a southpaw, or like if you're fighting that open stance, is probably the thing that you should opt to do rather than the lead. But I agree. Like a nice stabbing front kick would really do him good.
Maybe but lead knee, right?
Yeah.
Something to get his opponent to come forward more often. If you don't want to be the one leading, then, force your opponent's hand. If you're going to stay, present them that,
Yeah, he needs some pick-apart tools, right? Like some pick-apart tools would really help. Like, because, he's too fast. See, this is the thing. Even Vulcan, who has Uzdemir, who has a great chin, don't let that Yuri Prohaska knockout fool you. He has a great chin. Was even content to say he's out to lunch. He's not. He's gonna survive and keep his wits about him, which is fair. But I'm just saying, when you do meet a fighter like that, you do want to have some tools where you can kind of pick at them from the outside and make life difficult on the outside and score. Which I think was actually ultimately the downfall of a legendary GOAT, Anderson Silva, who didn't really have that like tool from the outside, that he could go to reliably. And I think Ankalaev would really benefit from that. So it is true. But we're nitpicking here. It was all in all a good performance. To the judge who scored. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say I really can't wait to see how he stacks up against the rest of the division going forward. Now that he's beaten someone as highly ranked as Volkan. We'll see. Maybe like an Anthony Smith would be interesting for him next.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe a Rakic. But yeah, I want to just say to the judge who, two things. One, to the judge who scored at 29-28, you're a fucking fool. What the hell is that?
The Volkan one, to be honest. Even the first round where he was doing his best work, he was still set back on his ass in the end of the round. So I failed to see where that's in what universe that's.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. But two, and this is the other thing. In the last 7 for Volkan Oezdemir, he's 2-5.
Ooh.
Yeah. Now, I do understand it was lose 3 straight, won 2 straight, and now he's currently lost 2 straight. But his wins are against Ilir Latifi, who's now a heavyweight, and Alexander Rakic in a controversial decision. So, at what point do we start? Does the clock start ticking? Because here's the thing: it's not like he's fighting. It's not like he's losing to bums. It's the Calvin Gastelum syndrome, where it's like you're competitive and you are losing to good talent, but you're losing at the end of the day.
Yeah, he's still highly regarded based on who his opponents are, but when you step back and look at his record, you're like, ooh, that's not great. His record doesn't necessarily reflect his ability, but wins and losses matter at the end of the day. They really do.
Yeah, right. And so, and I bring this up. I feel like I bring this up once every 5 episodes, but like, yeah, he's 2-5, right, in his last 7, and yeah, that that gets somebody cut in regular circumstances, especially if they're legacy contracts. And I say if Alistair Overeem can get cut off of 1 fight after winning like 3 straight, a lot of people can get cut. So I'm just saying, do in your opinion, do you think Volkan Oezdemir gets his walking papers maybe after a loss after this one, or
maybe it's just for me, light heavyweight is a thin division, right? It's looking more excited than it has in years, but it's still not paper thin. But if you start cutting top 10 guys and they start going to Bellator, I mean, Bellator is building a light heavyweight division as well, where they can actually put on decent, interesting enough fights. You have Volkan go over to Bellator. Ooh, man, I don't know that it's the smart move to do. The UFC doesn't always necessarily do the smart move, but I wouldn't recommend it personally.
I've had this weird theory, like this is super tangential, but I've had this weird theory that the UFC actually is trying to give Bellator good talent so that their antitrust lawsuit looks like, like the lawsuit they're in looks like it doesn't have a leg to stand on, because they could be like, see, look at Bellator's light heavyweight division.
Could be, yeah. They give up people who aren't necessarily big draws like your Corey Andersons and your Ryan Baders, but they're still somewhat of a name. Yeah, I can see that. The whole Demetrius Johnson, Ben Askren trade, like they really didn't have much to gain from that. I can see that.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a tangential theory though. Like I haven't really given it much thought. You want to go into what's
people's main event?
Yeah, I really enjoyed this one.
What a fight, man!
Versus Sanhagen. Man, you gotta get Peter Yan out early, or he is a bulldozer. Like that's just the story of this fight. First 2 rounds, Corey Sanhagen. I gotta say this: the judging was awful, in my opinion, and they're lucky, and nothing really came out to bite them in the ass at the end, because how you give Peter Yan the second round, I don't know, but
didn't Peter Yan drop him at the end of the second?
Third.
Is that the third? Are you sure? Okay.
Spinning back fist, left hand.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Either way, yeah, I do think. Man, I feel bad because I'm gonna have to rewatch the fight. I think I scored it for Yan in the second round, or at least I thought he started doing better. Mm-hmm. But I did have it. I had Sanhagen winning the 5th. I did.
Did you? Okay.
I thought he was doing better work in the 5th. Man, yeah, the things that made Sanhagen a great fighter made him win the rounds that he did. A lot of stance switching, targeting the body, pitter-pattering up top, and then targeting the body. Flying knees didn't work to the same effect that I thought they would, but he started off with a lot of attritive weapons where I'm like, wow, this is going to make a difference. But then Yan started targeting those attritive weapons even in the first round. That body kick, right? That low kick. It seemed like Sanhagen was presenting him with a lot of different looks, and I want to go back and watch it again to kind of pick that apart. But he did a lot of things that give Peter Yan trouble. It's just that over time, Yan is just a juggernaut and just figures you out and is able to ward off the worst of the shots that you throw at him and absorb the rest. And then eventually he just hunts you down. He just finds your timing in those exchanges. And that's what he did here.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it comes down from, like, even from a footwork perspective, some of the sneaky ways he would herd Sanhagen into, you know, unenviable exchanges with Perion, where he can really use his really fast hands, like really fast hands. Things like switching stances himself, things like being deceptive in the way he switches through his attacks.
Slowing down his footwork with the use of the low kicks.
Yeah, right. Even things like, just like, okay, like, this was really sneaky. Corey Sandhagen would throw a jab. The second Corey Sandhagen wants to switch, Perion takes a tiny step forward, just a tiny step. And what that does is it forces Sandhagen to go backwards, right? Because he wants to keep that range. And he does it again. And he does it again. And then all of a sudden, Sandhagen's at that warning track, that black line, right? And is trying to get out of there. And Perion's just running after him. You know, it was super, like, it was just one of those, like, really subtle things. And you know, Perion doesn't rest. Like, I think the hardcores understand that he's a very intelligent fighter, but I don't think he really gets that, like, what's the word I'm looking for? He doesn't get that reputation as an intelligent fighter because he doesn't really generate a lot of swing and miss per se, but he's a smart fighter.
It's a very different philosophy on how you should strike and how you should defend yourself. But at the end of the day, it's principally sound, and he's phenomenal at, you know, making those reads. And yeah, intelligence is a big part of his style. The ground exchanges in this fight were really surprised me. From there was, I feel bad because, like, the fight was so, I feel like the fight was so action packed and so full of detail that I've got to go back and watch it because it's all a bit of a blur. But there was one point somewhere in that fight where I think it was after the knockdown, Sandhagen attacks single leg X and then pulls it over into a heel hook, and just the ground exchanges were phenomenal in this fight as well. Yeah. Thoroughly impressed me. Big surprise.
There was an exchange in the fourth where Sandhagen gets the takedown, right? And then Perion goes to a heel hook. And then Sandhagen switches to his own heel hook. Then Perion gets up and then goes into guard. And then Sandhagen gets the back and then goes into side control. And Perion uses a almost like a variation of a funk roll switch to get to his own side control.
Sandhagen hit a funk roll in this fight as well. That blew my mind. I'm like, yes, one of my own.
Right. So yeah, it was wonderful. Like, I think all in all, just a really good fight. But yeah, clearly in that third, fourth, and I guess depending on who you talk to, fifth, Perion just started to bulldoze. But I do think Sandhagen was much better in that fifth. I had it 2-2 going into the fifth round, and just unfortunately Perion just came away with that last one.
One for the ages for sure. One of the better bantamweight title fights we've seen in a while. Honestly.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, not just a one-sided beating, like, you know, Dillashaw-Barao. This was a back and forth fight where we saw two very different philosophies of fighting play out and have success and make adjustments. And that's what I like to see. Those are the best kinds of fights, in my opinion. And I look forward to Aljo getting the next shot against Jan. But there's a lot of interesting matchups there, you know, from your Merab Dvalishvilis to your TJ Dillashaw's. This division's shit hot right now, and it cannot miss.
Yeah, right. Even prospects like sorry?
Even your Sean O'Malley's, if he can put a few together.
Yeah, and Cheeto Vera. I'd even, you know what? God honest truth, I think if Jose Aldo gets another shot at it, learns from his lessons, maybe makes a few adjustments, could really give Jan some trouble as well in the second fight.
I mean, he did in the first fight, right? I'd watch that.
Right? Like, people remember the ending where it was, like, uncomfortably sad. Like, I was like, I did the whole stop, he's already dead, remember? But people forget that first 2 rounds where that jab was just killing Peter Yan. The jab and the low kick. So,
it seemed to me,
like, Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go on, go on.
No, I'm just saying there's a lot of fun fights to be had, and I'm still pretty high on Aljo too. So a lot of fun fights to be had. Um, what I will say though is I'm very surprised guys aren't really blasting those low kicks down on Peter Yan, or at least making him worry about it.
I mean, Sanhagen was. It just seemed to me that Sanhagen, while he was landing, really didn't have the power to make Jan second guess, right? He didn't have the power for those shots to really add up and make a big difference. And, not that he's not capable of knocking people out, but they're really well-timed knockouts. He's not like a one-hitter quitter kind of fighter where he was landing to the liver. He was landing to the leg, but it just didn't accumulate to what, enough damage to slow Jan down in those later rounds when he was able to make those reads, I guess, I think TJ is an interesting matchup for him because I think TJ can effectively use his wrestling. I don't think his striking is quite as tricky as Sanhagen's. It doesn't build as much off from one exchange to the next, but it does have the consequences to make Peter Yan pay. So I'm interested to see that matchup. I'm interested to see a lot. Merab Devalishvili is an interesting one as well because he can really weaponize pace. Although it seems like, man, were you impressed by the cardio of these two guys or what? First of all,
I was super impressed. The shape Peter Yan's in, like, and I say this a lot. Strength and conditioning should be, if you are a UFC pro, from champion down to unranked, you should really be making that investment to strength and conditioning because that's what gets you in these fifth rounds, man. These guys were just in shape. Just the cardio and the conditioning
road work,
huh?
Road work, people.
Yeah, please.
Kids
get to your local track or track and field center. If you're a fighter, and I say that, get to your local track and field center, get in the pool, do what you got to do, because gone are the days where you can go to the Popeyes and then train twice a week and go in there and think you're going to be okay. It can't fucking happen.
I mean, if you eat Popeyes fried chicken, you probably will be okay. It worked for Derek.
If you're Daniel Cormier, yes. Everybody else, no. Okay, get in there and work hard. Okay.
So moving on down, I think. I think next we'll do Khamzat and then Volkov, and then maybe closing remarks on that horrible refereeing in the Zaleski dos Santos matchup.
Oh yeah.
Because honestly, this card's so good, we could be here talking all day about it.
Oh no, for sure. Okay, yeah. Let's talk about Khamzat. I guess I want to link the Khamzat and Lee fight with the Makhachev and Hooker fight in the didn't see that coming fight. Yeah, Jesus. Didn't see that coming category because Jesus.
Not at all. Yeah, just both of which. I mean, I guess we'll start with Hooker Makhachev because that was early, but I expected Makhachev to play around on the feet a little bit more, but that stance switching left hook into a double leg was just beautiful. Sat Hooker on his heels and then just level changed like lightning, and then played that positional. Yeah, so quick. Played that positional advancement game and was just able to collect the leg, snatch up the Kimura, and that was kind of all she wrote. Like, Hooker looked like he had a bit of leeway, but as soon as you step over that head in the Kimura position, you just really restrict the movements of the shoulders, and that was just a wrap. I was afraid Hooker's shoulder was going to tear. I love how a lot of these Dagestanis are bringing back the fact that grappling dominance is a thing. You can assert grappling dominance and A, produce quick finishes, and B, rise to the top of the division if your grappling is sound. MMA is not just striking with the odd takedown anymore. It's grappling is back, baby. It's back.
What impressed me is that, like, again, we talked about how I think last Makhachev fight, we talked about how there are differences between the two. I don't think I've ever seen Khabib hit a double as fast as that ever.
No.
And what's interesting about these Dagestani wrestlers? It's like, as much as they are very about position, like control, Dagestani handcuffs, stuff like that. They're very, very, very big on positional control. They're not afraid to take risks and fish for submissions. If you notice, Islam didn't even pass half guard before he going for that Kimura
No.
and overcommitting on it. Like he really committed. I think there was a point where his leg came over while he was still in half guard. Right? So that's man, it's just really like you gotta wonder for him and for even Hamza too, which we'll get to. Like what are
Hamza's
they
not Dagestani, by the way. He's Chechen.
No, you're right. You're right. Sorry. The Caucasus Mountains. The Caucasus. No.
The penis is
That's a
mountain.
Cat Williams show. Huh?
The penis
Sorry?
is mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. He's baby's
Cat Williams
Caucasus.
show.
Caucasus is it? Yeah, I know.
Caucasus.
It's not light. He's not light skin. He's rice skin.
But yeah, no, you gotta wonder what these guys are getting fed. What's their strength and conditioning like? What do they do? Because some of the things they do just defy the laws of science. Like strength wise, like it's insane. You know,
Speed, for fuck's sakes. Like the speed at which both of these men actually hit that double leg was uncanny.
it's
Uncanny.
wild.
I'm gonna come out and say it. I think that if Poirier wins in December, Makhachev will be the new champion.
Yeah.
If Oliveira wins, I'm less certain, but I think probably he'll be the champion.
I'm inclined to say it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm inclined to say it doesn't matter.
Just because of the ground threat and how Islam Makhachev might choose to play the matchup. I think Oliveira is a threat on the mat, whereas Poirier is much less so. Styles make fights, and I think that he will probably be champion as well by the end of 2022, but less so if Charles Oliveira wins. Those are my thoughts. I think he out-wrestles Gaethje.
My thing is, I wonder what Chandler, at least early, can do wrestling wise, because he is training with Usman, and you guys see some of the videos of him and Usman. Well, at least when they were in Sanford MMA. You gotta see some of these videos when they were grappling. It was stuff of legend. Like I encourage everybody to go see it. So Chandler knows positional control. He knows every wrestling maneuver in the book. Former All-American, I believe he was a runner-up in the NCAA tournament too. So, but quote me if I'm wrong. I might be wrong, but I think Chandler's the one guy who might present some issues, at least early. I don't know what he's like in the later rounds conditioning wise at this current moment, but yeah. Other than that, I don't see it.
For me, Charles is the guy to really present him an issue.
That's fair. I can see that, like active guard, right?
Maybe Dariush.
Maybe Dariush. I can.
But Dariush is just so wild on the feet, you know.
It depends what you know. What I would actually say, Gregor Gillespie would be interesting. It depends what Gregor Gillespie's like, because here's the crazy thing about Gregor Gillespie. On the pads, like if you see him work the pads, not bad, and I get the whole thing of everyone's a world champion on the pads, but you would like to see Gregor kind of like take what he's learning on the pads and put it to practice, right? So
hell no. I want to see Gregor spamming 5 double legs in 15 seconds.
He did against Pereira.
That's what I want. That's the kind of Gregor Gillespie I want to see. That's my Gregor Gillespie.
I just want to see him like Frankie Edgar this thing. Like, that's because I think he could be Frankie Edgar 2.0. Really do. Because
I want to see him be John Fitch 2.0, but with finishes. That's what I want.
Fair. Man. But yeah, I think Makhachev is interesting. I really like him. I think he could really be a star in the UFC. Maybe from a marketing perspective, from a talking perspective, not the kind of talker Khabib is, but definitely a guy who's skilled, talented, and is confident in himself. So yeah, I'm inclined to agree. 2022, watch out for him. Not even 2022, somewhere around there. He'll be challenging for a championship very, very soon.
I was thinking about it the other day. If all goes according to plan for the Russians, we could be witnessing a Russian takeover, in 1 or 2 years. If we get Ankalaev, it might be a little bit early to say something about Khamzat, but let's just say Khamzat. And then Makachev, 45.
Makachev, so Jan, Makachev.
And it's a bit of a stretch.
Magomed Sharipov is making a comeback too. And I before he was gone, anyone who hasn't seen Magomed Sharipov fight, got on his truth. I think he could beat Max Holloway. I really do.
I firmly disagree, but anything's possible. And I think some of those, anything's possible. I do think some of those Russians are more likely to get gold than others. But speaking of which, on Khamzat, maybe a little early to put him in title contention, but I thought this was an interesting test to see where he stacks up in the top 10, and he passed it with flying colors. Just a lightning double leg. Shot underneath the jab of Li Jinliang, and then it was just utter dominance. Didn't land a single strike, Li Jinliang. Did not land a single strike. And it was largely the same how his first two fights played out, not the third one against Meerschaert, but, control up against the fence, looking for that Dagestani handcuff, pounding until Li Jinliang gave up the back, and then just the rear naked choke was there. And Liang fought. He didn't give up at any one point and actually ended up getting put to sleep. But how about Chimaev picking him up in the center of the octagon, having a conversation with Dana?
Dude, I was gonna talk about this. So, okay, this is how you have something special here, because have you seen anyone do that to any human being besides Khamzat Chimaev, where he takes a person in the air and is telling Dana White, get off your phone? Insane. As he's got Lee in the air.
Frank Trigg, but better.
Huh?
Matt Hughes did to Frank Trigg, but a lot better.
Oh, yeah. Like, okay, fair enough. It's just like taking another human being. Like, I'm always, that's true, actually, because Matt Hughes took him while hurt, by the way. Took Frank Trigg over his head and just slammed him across the cage. But
this was epic.
It was just, it's one of those, like, signature moments. It's right up there with the Khabib. You have to give up. It's just one of those interesting, like, crazy moments in the cage where, a ranked contender who, by the way, knows how to wrestle and picks him up like a sack of potatoes and just is talking to Dana. It is, man.
Yeah. Before this fight, I was not a Khamzat doubter, but cautiously optimistic. After this fight, I'm wondering how he stacks up against the rest of the upper end of the top 10. I'm very excited for his career. I think this was great performance. Yeah, like you said, one of those marquee performances that we remember.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. If I were to pull up the UFC top 10, like, who do you think? Like, who do you think is the next matchup for him? Like, who do you want to see him up against?
It depends on how early you want to rush him into contention, right? I'd like to see him get another lower end of the top 10 kind of guy.
Mm-hmm. Because here's the thing, Lee was at what, number 9?
Li Jinliang was at 10 or 11, I think.
Okay.
I think Wonder Boy is interesting, but Wonder Boy is one of those guys that will, he's a contender killer. So I'm not gonna say Wonder Boy. I think I'd like to see him against, because Wonder Boy just has the style to make a lot of people look foolish.
Mm-hmm.
Who do we got? Ponzinibbio's a stretch. Jeff Neal could be fun. Yeah, Jeff Neal could be fun. I'm gonna pull open the rankings. You looking at them right now?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say Jeff Neal's a good test. A bit of a different trajectory to their career right now. Maybe Chiesa would be fun. Give him a nice grappling test.
Yeah.
Until then, I don't mind that either. Up until now, he hasn't really gotten anyone as the same caliber who could present him problems in the grappling department. I think Magny's well-rounded enough. I'm going to go Magny or Chiesa.
Okay.
Yeah. By the way, that ranking that I got, it was not an official ranking,
Mhm.
but fifth is a little bit high in the rankings to be placing him for being a number 11 guy. Well,
Yeah.
impressive, but yeah, I'm feeling a Magny or a Chiesa next would be a really good matchup. If not,
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Oh, yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm looking at the UFC rankings. Lee was a number 11. Chiesa's number 6. Magny's number 8. I don't see why not either one of those guys. See what he's like against other grapplers. Michael Chiesa, as much as he's not really a striker, he does have deceptive power. So if it does dissolve into a striking match, you never know what he could do in that.
especially because we haven't seen Kamzat for extended periods on the feet, right?
Exactly,
Don't really
exactly.
know what to expect.
Right. I was gonna say Vicente Luque, but Vicente Luque is number 4, which is
It's a
interesting,
little high
but
in the rankings right now.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a little high. And because Vicente Luque's got really great takedown defense, he's got a sneaky Darce when people do go for that double. So it's just like how does that deal with like that challenge?
Yeah.
Um, you know, I wouldn't. It's weird because stylistically, I wouldn't mind a lot of matchups. Like I would love to see a Colby Covington matchup to see like how do you deal with someone who can go at a high pace for a long time. I wouldn't mind a Gilbert Burns because it's like what do you do against a jiu-jitsu threat. Leon Edwards, a guy who can keep it standing, keep you at range. Like there's a lot of these fun. Bilal Muhammad is not bad at number 9 for me.
Yeah, there's
Um,
interesting questions I'd say that are unanswered, and a lot of matchups we'd like to see. But
yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Muslim Salikov too, I think, is a sneaky good anti wrestler. So there's stuff there.
So next up, I guess let's talk about. I've got to get out of here soon. So let's
Yeah.
talk about the referee controversy, and I guess we'll save Volkov for another time, or we could just a quick few words on the Volkov fight, I guess, because I skimmed it. I ended up catching it late, but what are your quick thoughts on Volkov?
I'm hearing a lot of people like not like it. I saw it and I thought it was fine. Like it was fine. Like it was heavyweight fighting. Guys start hot early. They fatigue, but I didn't think it was that bad of a fatigue. They were still throwing. They just were at a slower pace. And then towards the end, Volkov did what he had to do to win. Not the most impressive performance if he wants to call for a title shot after, but it was fine. It was a fine fight.
Okay, cool. Got you.
Yeah.
And then finally, we'll talk about the refereeing controversy in the Zaleski dos Santos fight against some poor French gentleman who truly went out on a shield. I forget his name. Do you remember?
Benoit Saint Denis.
Benoit Saint Denis, eh?
That's
He,
my French coming out.
he truly fought with the ferocity of Napoleon. But Jesus Christ. First of all, I like the decisiveness on the part of Mark Goddard to pull the plug and get this clown out of there as soon as possible.
Oh, it was Mark Radner.
Oh, Mark Radner?
Yeah,
Oh,
but
Radner.
Goddard replaced him for the next assignment that he was supposed to do.
Okay. Yeah, just absolute sheer incompetency. Letting a man get battered to the brink of death like that and not stopping the fight. Just staring there, just standing like some, 40 IQ robotic,
Man, and you know what pisses me off the most about it too is like you could tell it was a clear mentality thing. Like because it's not like he was there's people like, for example, Steve Mazzagatti, who just like they don't know any better. And it's like, for me, he clearly knew better. He's like looking, standing. Sorry, just had to turn the light on. He's looking, standing, seeing this person's getting beat to a pulp, is attentive enough to give away a point, to take a point deduction off of Ileski dos Santos, but is still not doing anything, which tells me
incompetence.
You have no humanity. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, you're in there to protect the safety of the fighters. I don't know how you can watch someone get beat to death not to. Before we keep ragging on the referee, I just want to bring up that the corner advice from Benoit Saint Denis just awful as well. Like the man's getting beat to death, and basically they're like, "Yeah, you need to kick, you need to wrestle, you need to take him down, use jiu-jitsu, trust in your hands." Like you're telling the guy a million things, right? a million things at once, what do you think he's going to do? You're not giving him a clear path to victory. And even still, they should have thrown in the towel as well. You got to know your fighter. You got to know when they're no longer in the fight. And you can say that, oh, he did better in the third round. So fucking what? One, this is a young fighter, and you have taken years off of his life and career. Number one. Number two, to me, it looked like in the third round, Zaleski took the foot off the gas a little bit.
Yeah.
It honestly looked like he, was merciful enough to take his foot off the gas in that third round. That's what it looked like to me. I could be wrong, but
no, I would agree.
When he had position, like he wasn't really looking for strikes. I don't want to say anything tough as hell, but that's the thing. Referees and corners, to a large extent, exist, especially referees, to protect you from your own toughness.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm with you. Like, I think collectively we can all agree it was a terrible job by the referee. I think the corner was awful. The corner work, on a night where the corner work was pretty good. Like, I really was a fan of Corey Sanhagen's corner that night. But yeah, they were bad, just collectively. But good on the UFC. We go on the show, and a lot of times for a good reason, we rag on the UFC for a lot of their decision making. But on this one, Mark Radner steps in. Mark Goddard replaces this gentleman who I don't even remember his name.
You sure it was Radner? Because I'm pretty sure it was Goddard who was in charge.
No, Goddard referee, but Radner made the call to get him out of there. Radner made the call. So Radner is an executive, right? Who made the call to get that gentleman out of there and had Goddard replace him. So yeah. Which, Goddard probably did gladly. So
yeah, of course.
Which is interesting because, as much as the Abu Dhabi Commission, so Abu Dhabi's not sanctioned by, like, let's say, like the Las Vegas Commission or anything like that, but they do have their own commission, right? So, not like, it's not like they're going into like other parts of the world where like they're kind of just by themselves. But with that being said, still a good decision by the UFC in general. So, yeah.
Yeah, good decision. Good decision to intervene on behalf of the fighters in this case, for the sake of safety. Well, I've got to head out.
Sure.
I think that
does us.
What's that?
Friend the children.
Children, subscribe to the podcast. Like it. Tell your friends about it. When you go trick-or-treating this year, hand out subscriptions to the Leg Kick podcast. And if you don't, we're going to leave an old heroin needle in your trick-or-treat bag. We're going to bury it in a candy apple. It's a Halloween-themed threat, Mike. We're going to put razor blades in your O. Henry, okay?
Oh, my God. Oh, man. Maybe in a Reese Cup. We'll see. In this crazy mixed-up world where there are razor blades in your own Henrys, remember, you got three things. You got life, you got family, and this podcast. Take it easy, everybody.